Hi everyone, welcome to my Shoreline Studio. I'm Sybille Muschik. Behind the camera is Joshua Blanc. Today we're going to continue on with our styrofoam, and we have this stuff called Time for Crafts, an Eva sheet. This is a 9x12. This is what they look like. The label is impossible. You can't get it off. It ruins the sheet. Kind of a silly thing to put on there. And our subject for today is Skyline. Now, Quesnel has a really beautiful skyline because the city itself looks over the two rivers. The main street looks over, well, it's not the main street, they call it the front street, looks over the Fraser River. And I happen to have just the buildings. These are during the daytime. This is the Occidental Hotel and sort of a pawn shop kind of thing next to it. And the Quesnel Hotel, there's I think there's a Tim Hortons in here, of course. So anyway, this is what we're going to, here's the river, of course, and this is sort of what we're focusing on. Last year we did a night shoot, so we took the cameras and we went down all through the city, took lots of shots. You'll probably be seeing more of that in the future. And the night scene is really quite interesting, and who doesn't like a good night scene with all the reflections on the water? So that's sort of what we're going to try for with this styrofoam sheet. And I've already started the draw. I just did this freehand from the photographs. I found that tracing onto the foam is next to impossible because your sheet, that you've copied from is just too thin, and the tracing paper, of course. And your pen will just go right through it. So I just drew it by hand and by eye, and so I found, and I will give you an example of one of the more reasonably successful pieces that I did before, and you can see the hotels here. This I'm using the Sybille inks, so they take a little longer to dry, and they're good. You can also just start with a black, straight sheet with acrylic paint because it doesn't run. This is water soluble. But for the sake of speed, it did do a nice black background, which we did first. So that's all okay. So we're going to start off by, I didn't find the trees really showed up that well. So what we're going to do is everything you push down will not print, right? Your brayer is going to go right over top with the ink, and whatever base color, they would be white if you're just working on a white sheet. But if you're working on a dark sheet, then that will pick up that darkness with the outline being in the colors that you're using. I know it's all clear as mud right now. But, well, you'll see. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to push down. I have a variety of tools here. So you want to make sure that they're not too sharp, but you should be able to push some of this down so that it doesn't print. And then you'll get your tree shape. You might have to do it with pens and things like that. We'll see how this works. If you were doing lino block, of course, you would be carving everything except the shapes that, like the roof and things like that you wanted to have print with the ink. And of course, you could do it as a stencil. That, we can cut these shapes out and then it will definitely, but that's for a future episode. That's probably the next one that we're going to do. So, and the other thing is you can cross hatch and that will put it down, and we'll see if that shows up. And just see it. And whatever you haven't pushed down, of course, will print, but that could be interesting. So then our trees will show up. This foam stuff, and it's quite flexible, as you can see, does take a line really well. And I'm just going to do the lines quick. Josh will put some music on, and we'll speed it up. So I'm going to push down all the windows as well, so that they will read as black. It was an evening after all, and the stores are closed, so. And I'm reinforcing the lines. I've taken some artistic liberties with the windows and things. I haven't got them all, like there's supposed to be 4 in the front here. But it would get very crowded looking, so I've made 3. It's not meant to be realistic. We're just trying to get an idea. Of course, this type of styrofoam is much softer, and it doesn't take the line as well as the Presto foam, but it's not bad, and it does print really well. And here's our little bushes. We'll get those cross-hatched as well. Overlapping is good. Creates interest. Otherwise it looks very static, especially buildings, so you want to give it as much attitude, if you like, as possible. I've made a straight road here, but I'm not going to emphasize it. That's the road in front of, that's Front Street, and then there's another road going up. And the next street is Reed Street, which is the main street. But they used to have cattle drives that went all the way down Front Street off the old wooden bridge. So there'd be cattle going down the streets. So I'm just making some dark areas between the lights from the buildings, the street lights and so forth. I didn't put any of the street standards in. You, of course, will, if you're doing this, will take lots of time. We're always in a rush here trying to get these tutorials done. So then the next step is to ink this plate, and I'm going to mix some, this is Speedball, as I said. These are water-based, and they're non-toxic, water-soluble. This is a violet. There is a medium that you could add to them. Usually I add glazing medium to the other ones, but you can't use that with the water-soluble because that's an acrylic base. So we're going to try and get a really dense color for the background. And I'm mixing some of the colors we'll be using in the front part. So this is quite a heavy layer. I want it really, really dark. Try and control all the little edges of your brayer so that you don't get these marks. Nice, clear strokes. And then we'll print that. The Speedball paints don't dry as quickly as the acrylic ones, so you have some time to work with them. Make sure all your edges are done. And, oh, there's a tiny bit on the back end here. Okay. Now that is nice. All right. So then we clear the plate, and it's fairly straightforward because it's water-based. And then just clear it off. Finish with a baby wipe. I rescue a lot of the baby wipes. I put them in a bucket and rinse them out and then reuse them. They're almost like cloth. And if some of them have picked up a lot of color, you might be able to use them in something other artwork. Okay, so now we have to do it the regular way. So I'm just going to put patches of paint. Just says yellow. Nice and straightforward. I used white in the first one, but it looked a little patchy. We'll see what, maybe I can mix it with a little bit of the white or the yellow or red. Not the red because it goes sort of pinky. And I'm just putting it up there. And we'll just use a little roller for each one. So then you have to sort of measure your image. Now if we can see it. So that's about that much of a plate before the buildings start. So we'll keep it black up here, and then we're going to start the color from here. Maybe I'll do a little tiny mark there. There we go. All right. So we're just going to do this intermittently. Now remember with printmaking inks, unless you're here for the first time, you listen for that snick. Now if it's too loud a snick is too much ink. If it's a softer snick, it's just right. So that's about just right. So we're just going to roll some of this on the plate. Here and there. It's got to be very vivid, so you probably have to put a fair amount of paint on. Just little rolls here and there. And usually you don't do this kind of thing but these marks are for below where we have this kind of thing happening, right? So that's perfect. So up here it's more solid, and then you do these sideways kinds of things on there. I might just add some more yellow, but let's start with the orange. I don't know how much orangey yellow we're going to get here. So that's streaks. So what you're trying to do is get the light happening the way you would see it on a dark night. And particularly the reflections. You don't want blobs, so be careful of that, but enough to be visible. And then we'll just go straight to red. And I might just pump up the yellows again. You want it as brilliant as possible. You're putting paint on a very dark surface. I'm just going to add a wee bit more color. Okay, there we go. I'm brayering off because I want the yellow to be really intense, and there's a fair amount of white in the yellow, and so it tends to get sort of pinkish, which is not what I want. So I'm just going to roll it on. You just have to play with this and experiment to see what works. You don't want blobs, but at the same time you want this intensity of color. I think that's looking pretty good. We'll try a little bit of the white and maybe just scratching it on here and there. It's all pretty well vertical little strokes and things, so there's a little bit of, distortion going on in the water particularly. So you can wiggle stuff. But where the buildings are, it's probably straight. fairly straight. So this is the fun part. This is where you play and play meaningfully. Maybe I might try that with some of the yellow. So the yellow is not very intense at all, and that's what really needs to show up. It doesn't matter if the paint's a little on the thick side, as long as it doesn't squash out too much, then because being squashy, it looks kind of awful. Is that a good artistic term, squashy?
Use it all the time.
Yeah, right. I'm sure some of us do. Okay, I think we're good. And then you might wipe back some areas so that it shows the black at the top, for example, and we do have trees there, so we have to be sort of mindful of that. Just maybe just smudgy here for, you wouldn't be able to see the trees very well when it's that dark, so they just sort of be shadow shapes. And here, where the dark of the river is taking over. You want it as irregular looking as possible, is what I'm saying. You want it flowing and not stiff looking. Okay, now we put this on. And I've cut this 8 by 10, so I've proceeded to get ink all over myself as usual. Well, par for the course. So push it down hard. And now our trees are a little bit higher, so what I'm going to do is maybe brayer a little bit more of the red at the top there. Just make it kind of nebulous looking. And that's nice about this, where you can fold it back and have a good look at what's happening. So in between prints, you really ought to clean your plate well, because otherwise you're picking up ink from the grooves, and then you don't have a nice clean line. And here's hoping. Our paint might be a little too thick, but I think some of the buildings will show through. Okay, this is print number 1. We may have to do this 5 or 6 times before we get a good one, but whatever. And we shall see. Okay, we can see some of the building. It's not bad. It's very impressionistic. I don't know. I kind of like it. The whole point was to get this glowy thing happening. So I'm good with abstract. We'll just put it up for the camera so you can see. There we go. Even at this point, if you wanted to enhance any of the buildings, you could scrape into it. I don't really want to do that, but and we see the line from the water here, the road here, and you can definitely see some of the buildings. So it's all good. All right, so let's try, I'm just going to ink the plate. We'll take an impression and then we will do just a straight print. Now, and I want to show you what this looks like. This is before I was just doing a test print just to see what it was like, just with black. But you can see the buildings pretty well. I think we will just take a white impression, see how that looks. Now, of course, this would be the reverse of the print, so it would be not the way the town looks, but interesting anyway. So this is it, just printing the plate. We had a lot of ink on there. And you can see all the buildings, so you could put a neutral tone over that. And I think that would look pretty good. Maybe a violet or something, a pale violet. And we can try that. Okay, what we'll do is we'll run one more color. Probably just a neutral, like a sepia tone, like our neutral gray, that we'll have to mix with what we have here. So a little bit of the violet. We use the violet all that much, but okay. So here, some good mixing skills. Okay, so start with the white. We want a really light color. Add a little bit of the violet, ever so slightly. We'll take some of the yellow, what's left of it. We need a fair amount, so we're going to lighten that up. And then we're going to gray it down ever so slightly. There we go. And just a little bit more yellow. Now we have to add a whole bunch of that medium to it because we want it to be fairly transparent. You're going to take off most of the paint. You just want a cohesive color. I'm just going to line it up as best I can. It won't be perfect, but not too bad. The nice thing about the Speedball, and I think aqua inks are the same, that they don't dry until you put it on paper. Yes. We could even, and I was afraid we were going to lose all our lines and things, but we haven't. So let's try for a sepia, as if it's an old photograph. We have this one still. So I found some Reeves block printing ink, same as the Speedball, a little bit on the heavy side. So I'm using more medium, and I also have some nice yellow. Let's see if we can get the sepia tone we want. A It'll look like an old photograph. A bit darker. Maybe I'll even add some black to it. Gray it down a bit more. That should be pretty good. Just a tiny bit of violet. Color mixing is fun, and then you do little swatches for yourself. And okay, so let's give this just a shot here. Remember, this layer has to be very light, and because we're working with opaque paints, I've added the extender in to make them more transparent. I have a few streaks, but that's okay. I guess I'll have to buy some more paints. Okay, we'll give this a shot and see what happens. Ooh. It's easy to go too far for sure. Well, the other one was better, so okay. Well, I think this one was a successful one, so we can crop the side off here. So that looks pretty good. Okay, well, we've done all these experiments. We've worked with our styrofoam. Let's just have a look at that again. And it's our flexible, and it takes the line really well. Takes color pretty well. Sybille printing inks and aqua inks are great. Certainly you can do it with acrylic. You just have to add a retarder to the paint so that you've got a more drying time and more applying time. So, well, it's been another fun day here at Shoreline Studio, and some crazy stuff happening as usual, but please join us again. Help our channel grow. We really appreciate it, and we love to hear your comments, and happy to answer them. So take care in these terrible times. Take care of your families, as I often say, and bye for now.